recruiting season. It feels like recruiting never stops now in college football. It routinely never has, but it by the rules would have to at some points. Like there were dead periods that were incorporated. It even feels like today's dead periods aren't really dead. Like, I mean, you're still like kind of in communication with all of these players, with handlers, with coaches, with so many people around the process now of recruiting. And for LSU, they will now host another event on campus coming up here this weekend, as they have, it feels like every weekend, whether it's an elite camp, whether it's an official visitor list, whether it's an unofficial visitor list, whether it's people that are making their way through the camp circuit and just stopping on campus. But this summer feels like it has been very active, and this is just really the new recruiting calendar and college football calendar. And this is why a lot of college football coaches are either going for the big contract or looking for NFL jobs because of the demand of the job. I mean, it's just, look, it's always been demanding. It's always been a job that has pushed 15-hour days. But now the schedule just doesn't even allow time to spend with family, to vacation because of this, because of recruiting. And LSU taking advantage of it. They're going to have some of the top prospects in the country on campus this weekend, again, including five-star Jonah Williams, who's the number one safety in the country, according to On3, and he's a big-time baseball prospect. So LSU is going to have the opportunity to have, some of their top recruiters in football. I mean, you're talking about think defensive recruiters and defensive backs. I mean, not only have I heard glowing remarks about Bo Davis, Corey Raymond, Blake Baker, which is all obvious, right? I mean, like, look at what Bo Davis did a couple of weeks ago when, he brought in Zion Williams, he brought in Damian Shanklin, he brought in another big defensive lineman from Florida who I'm missing that was pledged to Texas, but ended up flipping and pledging to LSU on Bo Davis's, on Bo Davis being the defensive line coach, and then obviously what Corey Raymond did last week in bringing in the five-star DJ Pickett. I mean, it's been very quick on the return on investment on that defensive staff. Beyond the headliners, Kevin Peoples and Jake Olson have a serious reputation on recruiting. I mean, like big-time recruiters behind the scenes, guys that are doing the daily tasks of what it takes to keep in the race for five-star type guys. I mean, to recruit a five-star, big-time number one player at their position type player, beyond the NIL stuff, beyond the money, beyond all of that, what it takes to stay relevant and the work that you have to put in every single day to allow them to let them know, hey, man, we're here. We're not going anywhere. We're investing in you. This is how we're investing in you. This is what we're going to do for you. I mean, a lot of that every single day, somebody's got to be committed to that. And guys like Peoples, guys like Olson, their names pop up routinely on, high-end recruiting. Big-time names, prospects, guys that LSU win for. I mean, DJ Pickett, Corey Raymond deserves a ton of credit. I mean, he earned his reputation, his check, all of what goes into Corey Raymond being who he was on DJ Pickett's recruitment. He also had a team of soldiers around him doing a lot of legwork to allow him to, run in a clear path directly at Pickett to make him, get the pledge. So LSU's got some big time recruiters right now on campus. And, obviously Jay Johnson and the baseball staff have proven their dominance. And to have, a prospect coming in town like Jonah Williams, who is a big time player on both sides, football and baseball, and unleashing some of this recruiting talent at him. It's a good sign for LSU. I mean, they're going up against Oregon, You know what I mean? Like, get ready for it. Oregon is now, they're going to be in every single discussion on anybody who's relevant. I mean, first and foremost, it's a place, if I was a recruit, I just want to go see. I mean, I would definitely take the official visit to Eugene and jump on a paid flight, stay at a team paid hotel, and go, live the Oregon life for a weekend.
Nike ID me.
And then, right, once I get out there, I mean, intoxicate me on all of what you have to sell, right? And
gonna OD on the check.
And it's one thing to go out there in the middle of June and July,
mm-hmm.
right? I mean, Eugene, Oregon right now is probably a postcard. I mean, it is. Leaves are beautiful. It's summer skies, outside, mountain climbing, outdoors, around the water. I mean, it's just ton of stuff to do. Go back in November when it won't stop raining and it's 10 degrees. And, Ohio State's in town. I know but being from the South, standing in the middle of a blizzard, about to, play a full contact game, doesn't sound too appealing to a lot of us down here, right? And I think Oregon's trying to really beat that right now. I mean, they're really trying to bring people out there and allow them to see, like, hey, look, this is a cool place. It's
always like,
right? This is a cool place.
I mean, if you look at their schedule, it's not just Oregon. They have to go to, obviously, they play at Illinois, Washington, Wisconsin, Michigan, Purdue, Michigan State. Like, you're not running away from the cold. It's only going to get worse. But for LSU, and I know there's been a lot made for Oregon, and they're always getting, like, the hat on the table at this point, because it used to be definitely take the official visit. Like, Oregon would end up, I wouldn't say on the table, but you would get visits from guys that are like, I mean, you have to go see Oregon because of what it is. It's Nike.com. But now with them spilling some of that Nike money over to football, it went from take an official visit to I might commit, because now I'm getting more than just all the sights and sounds of Nike. I'm getting a check with the check, which is enticing for some. But in the case of Jonah Williams, I think Shea did a great write-up on it, where this baseball thing's a major factor. And I don't know if you want to play baseball. I mean, you saw LSU go up there and play Oregon. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Cruz's sophomore year or his freshman year?
Freshman
year, and LSU would beat the brakes off of them there. And that's just a factor for Jonah Williams. And you tell me that you're going to get to campus with the recruiting of Corey Raymond and Jay Johnson and Brian Kelly and all of the things that are attached to that, where it's not like he plays baseball as a hobby. He's also looking at the Major League Baseball draft next year. Like, he's a legitimate center fielder, and he can pitch, and he's 6'3", 205 pounds. Like, I don't care if you can play baseball or not. Just go put the uniform on. But he's a legit player, and you've seen the kind of the waves being made from he was interested in LSU and Texas A&M, and that's why Shea continues to bring up LSU. Everybody keeps saying Oregon, Oregon, Oregon. He's like, this baseball thing matters because he is now he's now garnering interest from Texas after the coaching switch from Schloss, where he's like, oh, okay, I could do that there too, because now they're a power player in both football and baseball. So I think that's a factor in why you continue to see LSU remain in the mix.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and Jonah Williams would be, man, you talk about would be a pull in this class, especially from what they've done over the last couple of weeks defensively, and talking to some people around LSU and cover recruiting. I definitely wouldn't close the book on this Jabari Antoine thing. I mean, I get that Antoine committed to Miami, and the Florida schools have been and done a really good job with Antoine this summer. He spent a lot of time over there. He played on a 7-on-7 team that originated out of Florida. I mean, he spent a lot of time around those kids and prospects. But Louisiana is home. LSU is the state school, and he was at one point committed to LSU, and I don't think that is over. I think that there's definitely still a pulse there on both sides, and that's something that will come down to the finish line. And if you were able to add, some players like Williams and Antoine into this class defensively, I mean, now you're talking about a real balanced class as far as star power and the ability to really kind of change the complexion of the defense overnight with a class like Keelan Moses, DJ Pickett, Zion Williams. You throw Jabari Antoine and Jonah Williams in there. I mean, now you're talking about some serious move the meter, star power, guys get on the field early, make an impact, cause, change of climate to your program. Those are the recruiting classes. And I think people are really starting to pay attention that, LSU's starting to figure it out as far as getting aligned. I know we've heard that word as far as the personnel goes from LSU's athletic department, but I think now within the NIL space, LSU is really organizing the chips, no pun intended on that, but I mean, they're really kind of stacking them in the spots that they need to have these conversations and really compete alongside Ohio State, Oregon, Miami, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, the schools that are going to be getting the players, the schools that are in contention for getting the players. And as you've seen over the last couple of weeks, LSU is getting the players. And these types of players aren't going to schools that don't have it figured out from an NIL spot or don't have a plan in place of how it's going to work. So, good on LSU for really kind of figuring this stuff out and having a real opportunity at some of these guys that'll be in for the Bayou Splash. And the Splash, as we said, coming up this weekend, and you'll have a lot of the guys that are already committed to the class that are here, guys like Harlem Berry, JT Lindsay, running back out of Alexandria.
That's right.
Will be back. Offensive lineman Tyler Miller and Devin Harper. Defensive lineman Damian Shanklin, who we've mentioned from Indianapolis. And by the way, I mean, Shanklin, who they beat out Ohio State, Bama, some big-time schools for. I mean, if you're paying attention, this guy loves LSU. Mm-hmm. I mean, I started following him on social media just kind of once he committed. And since then, I mean, my feed is filled with love from Damian Shanklin for LSU. I mean, and then, you start kind of reading about him, listening to people talk about him, people that cover him. I don't know anything about him, but watching the tape and listening to the people that cover it talk about him, he is a big-time player. I mean, the potential, and I hate the word potential because it just means you hadn't done it yet, but I mean, you can see the skills on a very raw frame. I mean, he still is a producer in high school, but he's going to look a lot different. Like we talked about Meadows yesterday, Derek Meadows, 6'6" frame, Las Vegas, senior in high school. You turn on the film and watch him play. He's physically imposing, intimidating. I mean, he's got the physical, set that you need to be successful, but he's going to look so much different 2-3 years from now, obviously with the body development and where he is in life, but just the commitment into a D1 SEC weight program, nutrition program, and his frame is just, it's got so much room for growth. Shanklin kind of feels like the same type of player. I mean, he's borderline dominant now. And to think about, you get him into the program, you get him on the high-end coaching, the weight program, all that goes into being the player that LSU demands you to be. It's scary to think about how good he could be. I mean,
have you seen the video of him recruiting Derek Meadows to LSU that was put up by 247?
I'm not.
I have it pulled up right here.
I mean, look at the neck on that guy.
What's up, Derek, man? You know where to come at, cuz. It's just simple, cuz. I'm hurting right now. I just got out of practice, but I can care less about that. You need to come to the Bayou, brother. The boot. The boot, brother. We need you. Me and our bond. Me and you, our bond like that, bro. Just come to the L game.
I mean,
don't let me down.
That's strong, man. I mean,
don't let me down.
They got a lot of guys that I think that just feel like they're all in.
Right.
He's talking about LSU like he's from Louisiana.
Right.
In a world that just is very volatile. It's just uneasy.
When they're that level of player, like Bryce Underwood, the way he talks about LSU. I mean, he goes to school in Michigan.
Yeah.
That's nowhere near here. And he talks about LSU. He's like, I'm not backing out of this. And he's actively pushing for more players. Like Meadows commits, and he's like, I saw something about him saying, like at LSU fans, I got y'all. Like he's working. Behind the scenes, like the players in this class are working probably almost as hard as the coaches and the recruiting staff to get these guys on the campus, because they see the potential. They see what this 2025 class has turned into and can continue to grow into.
Yeah. No, it's a potentially what it could be on the heels of what have been really good classes. You kind of stack these things up, and that's really how you make these playoff pushes. And they will have somebody in this weekend that they're looking to possibly flip, and that is Solomon Thomas, who is the number 1 ranked interior offensive lineman in the according to On3, who is verbally committed to Florida State, will be in town this weekend. And look, we have seen this before. This is something that kind of feels like, it's almost inevitable if Brad, if Brad Davis has you on his radar and he's got you on his board, he doesn't miss much, and he hadn't missed, it feels like, in a couple of years. And Solomon Thomas seems like the latest target from Davis and the offensive line crew, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they get the flip and commitment from Thomas at some point. So heads up for that, which potentially could be something to watch this weekend. Some other guys that have said that they'll be in town that everybody will be watching. Obviously, LSU got the commitment from Derek Meadows, the 5-star wide receiver earlier this 4-star wide receiver earlier this week. But Jamie French, the 5-star wide receiver, who said he was leaning LSU over Miami at this point, is going to be in town, which is would be an enormous get in this class when you talk about what they just did at wide receiver, and that really goes to kind of solidify that room after Terrion Francis committed earlier in the recruiting process, which was a solid, huge pickup, number 1 wide receiver in the state of Louisiana. I mean, that's a guy you have to get every single year. I mean, if you do a little research on who that guy is every single year, I mean, that is usually a pro and a high-end pro to get him, and then throw in a guy like Meadows, who's going to have a very special skill set with his size, his frame, paired with his speed. And then, if you can pull somebody like French, who is just, one of these 5-star, freaky, catch a slant route, take it 85 yards, run away from everybody type guy.
And there's some interesting things written about French where it's not – it felt like that was kind of a pipe dream whenever you had DeCorian Moore committed and you were looking around at other wide receivers. Now you get Derek Meadows in the boat. But Jamie French, I didn't know that he had family in Baton Rouge and his mom's from Baton Rouge.
Oh, wow.
So that makes a world of difference. Family in Louisiana is tough to get away from. Hell, I'm still here.
Wow. I mean, mom's side, too.
Uh-huh. Mother was born in Baton Rouge and still has family living in Louisiana. So that's kind of a sneaky pool there where at one point he was RPM to LSU where it was sitting around like 80%. Now you see it floating at like 19%. The RPM is wild right now because everybody is trying – I don't think anybody can figure out Oregon because they're in every recruiting battle and it makes a ton of sense. So you just kind of have to put a percentage over there. But LSU is sneaky.
Go back in November, boys.
Yeah, but LSU is – I think the world's starting to take note a little bit of like, oh God, they're doing it again. Like because I think
they're getting it figured out.
Yeah, but I think that was the easy thing to say. It's like, oh, LSU, they don't have NIL, they don't have money there, and all of these things are not true. And so when you're starting to see them, especially with like the way that they want to do it with like the rights media money and all of these things, like that gives you that evens the playing field. And for a school like LSU, where they have the recruiting that they do, all things created equal, LSU is a tough place to not at least to visit or put a hat on the table. Then you just got to win that battle.
Yeah. No, I mean, getting recruits on campus is one of the biggest flex that LSU has because LSU is cool. Like, it's not like they're just getting NIL right. They're getting NIL right, and LSU as a school and as a brand is cool. They're seeing these people on TV. They're seeing the white party picture. Like, Oregon doesn't have that. Yeah, they have the money and they have Nike, but they don't have these brands like Flaugier. They don't have Paul Skeens. They don't have Odell Beckham, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jett. Like, just
that are out there, like, public.
Right. And so, like, it's just a whole nother level on top. And then you, like I said, you have the recruits that are also recruiting the play. Like, it's kind of this monster that's been built over the last couple of months where it's kind of come to fruition, and we're actually seeing the results of it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, this no better time to sell LSU's brand than what it has experienced.
And how many times have we said that?
Right. I mean, it just almost continues to get stronger. Some other guys that will be in town this weekend that aren't specifically a part of this immediate class, but the future class is some really big guys of 2026, and that is 5-star Ohio State wide receiver commit Chris Henry Jr. And this is an interesting story here. Chris Henry Jr., who his dad is originally from New Orleans and was a big-time prospect coming out of New Orleans, but was going through had some off the field trouble coming out of high school. I don't know the specifics of the story, so I don't want to get into it. He ended up at West Virginia. Chris Henry did. And Henry was a standout at West Virginia and went on to play for the Cincinnati Bengals. And for a couple of years stretch, he was the second wide receiver in a trio that included Chad Johnson, Chris Henry Jr., and T.J. Houshmandzadeh. That was as good of a wide receiving core that the league had. Carson Palmer was their quarterback, and they were a hell of an offense. And Henry was explosive, just in the NFL, a guy that could run away from people. He was tragically killed while he was in the league. He was riding in the back of a truck arguing with someone and was thrown out of the back of the pickup truck and died on the scene. And I remember the story like it was yesterday almost. And it was a tragic ending to a athlete's and person who was, look, he had turmoil, and was someone that was in trouble a little bit, but was a big time player, and his son now is a recruitable athlete who was actually adopted by his former teammate, and again, someone who is not, he's pretty familiar with, kind of off the field trouble, Adam Pac-Man Jones. And Pac-Man was kind of like leading this recruitment for a while, and it was crazy. Like it has gone through some, talking to some inside sources on LSU side, it's been pretty wild at times on just trying to track down Henry and going through Pac-Man. Now LSU has a pretty good lead in line in with Henry's mom, and has really pounced on that and made up a lot of ground. And getting him here this weekend, and he's somebody who lives up in Ohio, pledged to Ohio State. Obviously, when you're talking about recruiting wide receiver rooms, there's only about one or two schools that can compete at the top against one another. And if there are two, it's LSU and Ohio State. can go kind of toe for toe at one another. And this is going to come down to recruiting. This is going to come down. This is going to be fun to watch because LSU has Henry Jr. high on the board. Ohio State obviously has him committed. He'll be at LSU this weekend. You'll have an opportunity to really kind of sell him on the future, on what's coming in with, guys like Harlan Berry and JT Lindsey will be here. And, I don't know if Underwood, if they can get him here, but, obviously you can recruit towards him. So that will be a big story to watch this weekend. But Chris Henry Jr. is he's in a tight – this recruitment I think is going to be pretty fun to watch, and it's going to be tight coming down the stretch. The other two underclassmen that'll be interesting to watch this weekend is going to be Jackson Cantwell. Cantwell is a offensive lineman that is kind of hitting the campus circuit over the last couple of days. He visited Georgia, Alabama, and he will be at LSU coming up this weekend for the Bayou Splash. And then the final one is Jakeem Stewart, the big defensive tackle out of St. Aug, which, there is never a world where LSU can miss on Jakeem Stewart. I don't care what the story is, who the school is. This is, ultimately, like we talked about Colin Simmons was for Texas in last year's recruiting cycle for Steve Sarkisian and that staff. Same thing probably DK Moore is in this one. I don't think that the DK Moore recruitment's over and that Texas, has pitched their final plea to Moore. And I think that final one is going to be, it's almost impossible to say no to. That's what Jakeem Stewart's offer has to be for LSU. And however you make that. And there's creative ways to do this stuff. There's a lot of big-time successful business people down from New Orleans who love LSU football a lot more than they love just about anything else in their life. And ways for Jakeem Stewart to be set up for life. And those are the types of deals that you have to do for these specific prospects that come along once every 5, 7, 10 years in a cycle. Number one defensive lineman in the country out of New Orleans, St. Aug High School, where Frank Wilson and Cortez Hankton went to high school. There is not a world that exists that Jakeem Stewart goes to anywhere but LSU. I mean, it cannot happen. And it's not because LSU's defense is going through the struggles that they've been through the past couple of years. I don't care if LSU was rolling the number one defense in the country out every single year. There is never a world that can be created where Jakeem Stewart does not end up at LSU. He's that big of a prospect. He's that meaningful of a prospect. He's what we've talked about. He's Leonard Fournette. There was never a world where Leonard Fournette was leaving Louisiana. No matter the offer, no matter no matter what Alabama was, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You're not losing him. You can't survive. You almost can't survive the optics of something like that. Just like Texas recognized, when Sark finally sat down and said, we can't lose Jamal Adams anymore. We can't lose Calevon Chasson anymore. Right? I mean, if those are the guys that we want, we got to make sure and keep LSU away from them. LSU's playing the same type of defense with guys like Stewart. Next cycle. Can't lose him. Can't lose him. So I know that Stewart's taking all the visits. He's doing all the things. He's putting his top 5 out. No LSU. Nope. Let him enjoy everything. However he wants to handle recruitment, fine. But when it's time to sign, he's going to LSU. And that has to be LSU's mindset is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking to Stewart. I mean, you just give him an offer that
All things created equal.
You can't say no.
Yeah, it's the Colin Simmons for Texas, right?
Exactly.
Where it was, obviously it felt like an LSU had on the table. Like, you put the idea out there when you had Caden Durham, who we talked to, and it felt like, okay, LSU's in the mix, but he had some, DeMarco Murray was recruiting him from Oklahoma. Obviously is at Duncanville, which is like a Texas hotbed. But Caden Durham pulls the LSU hat out, and then you're starting to think, okay, maybe they're going to get everybody from Duncanville when you had DK Moore, Caden Durham, and Colin Simmons. But Texas put its foot down and said, you're not getting the best defensive prospect we have out of the state because the optics. You can't act like that door's open for people or teams to come in and come get your best player out of your state, because that's how the floodgates open. This is part of building the fence, whether it was Orgeron who kind of brought that emphasis back, and then I think Brian Kelly saw the vision after year one, where it's like, oh, God, these are the guys that, like, they're in your home state, guys. You don't have to go very far to go get them. And for a guy like Jakeem Stewart, where you've been building the hype machine for almost, it'll be 3 years at that point, and he's going, like, the recruiting will probably still be a circus, where he's going to go everywhere and get all of the visits, get all of the promises. And if you're LSU, I don't know if it's not one of those times where you pull what Tennessee did with Nico and be like, here's a 3-year deal. Like, there's no transfer portal, there's none of that. You figure out how to get that contract done the way that they did, and you lock him up for 3 years. You're at LSU. And if this was a non-NIL world, I think it would still be a little bit like the Leonard Fournette recruiting, where you were still nervous, right? You were still, certainly he's not going to go, but maybe, I mean, the University of, like, oh, God, what? LSU to boot, baby. And so, like, but that's where you were holding your breath for a collective second when Leonard Fournette was getting recruited, because at that time it didn't feel like LSU didn't have as much to sell, right? Like, you needed Leonard, like you needed air. Right. And for LSU, it's trending in a different direction, where now you can come pitch the program as well. Like, Kevin Peoples and that defensive line, you finally have a staff in place where it's like, not only can you come to LSU and be everything, that hometown kid, all of those things, but you can come here and get developed and come here and leave a better player than you were when you got here, which is not something that I don't think you could say the last couple of years.
Remember Daily, we're brought to you by Katie's Restaurant. Katie's located on Iberville Street, right in the heart of Mid-City, New Orleans. They've been there since 1984 with a great restaurant menu. They've expanded. They got 6 new televisions on their part of their upstairs now. Open on Sundays. Remember to check them out on Sundays. Great spot to watch the games with football season coming up. If you're looking for a spot to post up and watch good football, good eats, good drinks, good service, Katie's in Mid-City got you taken care of. Located on Iberville Street, online at katiesinmidcity.com is where you can find them there on the website. So a huge recruiting weekend for LSU at the Bayou Splash happening. We will keep you posted on that. Also with Big Ten and ACC media days happening, and these will be the final 2 before you really start to get into the discussion of college football and getting underway here, just a couple of weeks away from LSU and USC. As we said, remember, if you want to be a part of that, you can at MrFundsTravel.com. So we will keep you up to date on anything that goes on. We will have you an update on the Bayou Splash before Friday to let you know what's going on there. So, like we said, this is a huge time for recruiting. I mean,